In the heart of a dusty old town, where the sun set with a golden hue and the air was thick with stories, stood Hank's saloon. The wooden building creaked with age, its paint peeling and faded from countless years under the blazing sun. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of smoke and spilled whiskey, mingling with the laughter and chatter of townsfolk who gathered there each evening. Hank, the saloonkeeper, was a grizzled man in his 50s, his face marked by deep lines from laughter and worry alike. He wore a weathered cowboy hat that shadowed his twinkling blue eyes, which seemed to hold 1,000 tales. The townspeople respected him not just for pouring the strongest drinks but for his unwavering sense of justice. When trouble brewed in the town, they often looked to Hank to set things right. Behind the counter, Hank skillfully shook cocktails while swapping stories with patrons. A group of miners slumped by one table, their dirty faces alight with excitement as they spoke of their recent gold finds. At another table, a cluster of farmers leaned in close during a heated discussion about cattle prices. The lively dancers swayed to the tune played by a local fiddler, filling the room with music that lifted spirits. But amidst the laughter and revelry, there was an unspoken tension. Life in this town had not always been easy. Disagreements could turn into brawls in an instant. Yet, the saloon remained a refuge, a place where everyone found solace after long days of toil. Even as whispers of trouble began circulating among the regulars, Hank stood steadfast behind his bar, ready to defend his turf and keep the peace. Little did he know that change was riding into town on a dark horse, bringing with it a challenge that would test his strength and resolve like never before. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the saloon buzzed with life, each regular adding their own flair to the vibrant atmosphere. Among them was Sheriff Bill, a friendly figure with a broad smile and a sturdy sense of duty. His hat was slightly too big for his head, often slipping down over his brow. The townspeople admired him not only for his quick draw but also for how he treated each citizen with respect. Sheriff Bill would often share tales of his latest adventures while keeping an eye on the saloon's goings-on, ready to step in if trouble flared. In contrast, there was the cunning gambler known as Lucky Lou. His slicked-back hair and mischievous grin hinted at a man who thrived on risk. Lou delighted in high-stakes card games, often leaving patrons on the edge of their seats. He had a talent for charming everyone around him, including Hank, who had learned to keep a close watch over Lou's swift hands. Their playful banter filled the saloon, but Hank remained cautious. He knew that luck could turn faster than a tumbleweed in a storm. Adding to the lively mix were the dancers, a trio of spirited women who twirled and spun under dim lantern light. They wore bright dresses that flowed around them like petals in the wind, bringing joy and laughter to all who watched. Their laughter rang through the air, providing a delightful distraction from any worries lingering beyond the saloon doors. Together, these colorful characters created an unbreakable bond in Hank's saloon. Each brought their own story, filled with hopes, dreams, and secrets, intertwining their lives into a rich tapestry of community. However, with whispers of impending trouble growing louder, the relationships they forged would soon be tested in ways none of them could predict. One evening, as the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the hills, a dark horse clattered into town, its rider cloaked in shadow. The stranger dismounted and tied his horse to the hitching post outside Hank's saloon. He wore a wide-brimmed hat that obscured his face, leaving only a hint of a smirk visible. The moment he stepped onto the wooden porch, an uneasy hush fell over the regulars inside. Sheriff Bill, who had been recounting tales of his latest apprehensions, paused mid-sentence, his eyes narrowing at the newcomer. Lucky Lou, sitting at a nearby table with cards in hand, couldn't help but size up this mysterious figure. Whispers began to ripple through the saloon as patrons exchanged glances filled with curiosity and concern. Who was this man? What did he want in their quiet little town? The stranger sauntered in, and the atmosphere shifted dramatically. The lively chatter ceased as he scanned the room, his gaze lingering on each face before settling on Hank behind the bar. Hank felt a chill run down his spine. He was no stranger to trouble and knew that this man could spell danger for them all. As the night wore on, rumors swirled like dust in the wind. Some claimed he was a bounty hunter looking for someone hiding out in town. Others said he was after gold. Perhaps even stolen gold that had gone missing from a nearby mine. The lively dancers faltered in their steps as they noticed the tension in the air, their laughter fading into anxious whispers. Hank remained vigilant, cleaning glasses but keeping an eye on the stranger. He could sense that a storm was brewing, and soon enough, it would reach their doorstep. Little did they know that this mysterious figure carried secrets that would soon unravel the fabric of their tight-knit community. The tension in Hank's saloon reached a boiling point when the stranger, who had introduced himself as Colt, challenged Hank to a game of cards. The regulars exchanged nervous glances as they gathered around the table, knowing that in this town, a card game could change everything. Sheriff Bill leaned against the wall, arms crossed, ready to intervene if things took a turn for the worse. Hank, ever confident but wary, set up the cards under flickering lantern light. "What are the stakes?" he asked, eyeing Colt closely. The stranger smirked and replied, "How about your saloon?" Gasps filled the room. Hank's heart raced at the audacity of Colt's wager. The saloon was not just his business. It was his home. The game began with each player carefully calculating their moves. Hank shuffled the deck with practiced ease, while Colt played with a calm confidence that unnerved everyone watching. With every round, the stakes escalated, not just in chips but in pride and reputation. Hank could feel the weight of every gaze upon him, hoping he wouldn't let them down. As the final hand approached, both players were all in. The air was thick with anticipation. Even the dancers paused mid-step to watch. Hank revealed his hand first, a strong flush that should have sealed his victory. But Colt's eyes sparkled with mischief as he laid down a royal flush, leaving everyone breathless. The cheers and gasps echoed throughout the saloon. But just as victory seemed certain for Colt, Hank's instincts kicked in. "I know you're not just here for a game," he said sharply, locking eyes with Colt. "What do you really want?" The room fell silent again, tension crackling like electricity as they awaited Colt's answer. One that would reveal whether this showdown was merely about cards, or something much more dangerous lurking beneath the surface. As silence enveloped the saloon, Hank's heart raced, weighing the stakes of the moment. He had always prided himself on being a fair and just saloonkeeper, someone who brought people together. But now, faced with Colt's calculating gaze and the possibility of losing his saloon, and thus his home, Hank found himself torn between conflicting desires. On one hand, he wanted to keep the peace. The saloon was a refuge for many in town, a place where laughter and camaraderie thrived. Hank had built relationships with every regular who walked through those swinging doors. Sheriff Bill and Lucky Lou relied on him as much as he did on them, their lives intertwined like the roots of an ancient tree. If he allowed violence to erupt or back down in fear, he would be letting everyone down, betraying their trust in him. Yet there was another part of him screaming to protect his reputation and honor. Hank knew how valuable each card at that table could be, not just for money but for respect in this rough town. What would it mean if he lost everything to a stranger like Colt, who appeared to revel in chaos? The thought of being seen as weak gnawed at Hank's gut. Would he be able to hold his head high knowing he had let an outsider dictate his fate? In that moment, time felt suspended as energy crackled in the air around him. He glanced at the faces of his friends. The sheriff's supportive gaze urged him to remain strong, while Lucky Lou's sly grin hinted at opportunities yet unseen. Silent encouragement came from the lively dancers standing by, frozen mid-performance, embodying hopes that this confrontation could become a turning point rather than an ending. Taking a deep breath, Hank realized that sometimes real strength wasn't about winning. It was about standing firm against adversity while protecting what mattered most to him, his home and community. With that resolve hardening within him, he braced himself to confront whatever truth Colt might reveal next. With the tension palpable in the air, Hank felt a spark ignite within him. He took a deep breath, steadying himself as he considered how to turn the game in his favor. Not with bullets or fists, but with strategy and cunning. The saloon's patrons watched, their breaths held, as Hank painted a picture in his mind. He knew Colt's type. He had dealt with plenty of tricksters over the years. "Let's raise the stakes," Hank said, a hint of confidence lacing his voice. The room stirred with curiosity. Hank leaned forward, his fingers tapping lightly on the table, gaining attention. If I win this game, you'll leave town and never come back. Colt raised an eyebrow, intrigued. And if I win, you get my saloon, Hank replied coolly. But if you lose, you owe me your horse. A murmur spread among the regulars, a mix of excitement and disbelief at the boldness of Hank's gamble. Colt smirked, clearly intrigued by the unusual wager. Hank's heart beat fast. He hoped this would catch Colt off guard and play on his arrogance. As they shuffled and dealt again, Hank recalled all those long nights he had spent mastering the nuances of poker, reading players' tells and calculating probabilities. This was his moment to shine. As the cards were laid down for the final hand, Colt's confidence faltered just slightly when Hank declared he had an unbeatable combination. Not just any poker hand, but a calculated bluff that mirrored one of however many cards Colt believed to hold high value. With a flourish, Hank definitively revealed his cards, perfectly gauging Colt's reaction. Stunned silence fell across the saloon until Hank slowly twisted his hand to reveal not one but two winning possibilities. The ruse had worked. Colt's expression shifted from smugness to shock as he threw down his own lesser hand in defeat. Hank smiled, knowing that while he might not have had a gun at his side, his wit was sharper than any blade. With cheers erupting around him, he declared victory, not just over a card game but over fear itself, leaving Colt no choice but to honor their wager and ride out of town for good. The saloon erupted in celebration as peace returned and trust solidified among friends once more. As Colt rode out of town, a wave of relief swept through Hank's saloon. The tension that had gripped the place for days lifted, and laughter began to fill the air once more. Hank stood at the bar, his heart swelling with pride as his patrons congratulated him on securing their beloved community space. Sheriff Bill, a wide smile spreading across his face, clapped Hank on the back and shouted for a round of drinks for everyone. The trio of dancers jumped into motion again, twirling happily around the floor, vibrant skirts swirling in time with the upbeat music played by the fiddler. Regulars hugged each other and exchanged stories about their brushes with fear and uncertainty during Colt's visit. They shared how they felt threatened but were now rediscovering their sense of safety, all thanks to Hank's bravery. Hank moved through the crowd, grateful to see familiar faces illuminated by joy. Yet he also sensed that Colt's presence hadn't left them completely. An unshakable reminder lingered in the air. This experience had stirred something deeper in the hearts of those who gathered at the saloon, a realization of just how fragile their harmony was. It reminded them that peace should never be taken for granted. As night fell, Hank raised his glass high. "To our community," he declared, his voice carrying over the cheerful noise. "Together we stand strong." Cheers erupted around him, affirming their unity and close-knit bonds. But even as the festivities continued, Hank resolved to keep watch over his saloon and its people with renewed dedication. He understood that challenges would arise again, but this experience had galvanized them. Colt had left town, but his unwelcome visit had planted seeds of courage among the townsfolk. They would face whatever came next together, united in loyalty and resilience as a true community, a family forged in adversity. As the night wore on and the sounds of laughter continued to echo in Hank's saloon, Hank found a quiet moment to reflect. He leaned against the bar, his worn hands wrapped around a glass of whiskey, and watched as friends danced, celebrated, and shared stories. The energy in the room buzzed with relief and camaraderie, a stark contrast to the uncertainty that had plagued them only hours before. Hank's thoughts drifted back to Colt's sudden arrival and how close he had come to losing everything dear to him. Yet, instead of fear, it was courage that had won the day. Hank realized that real strength comes in many forms. It isn't always displayed through guns or bravado, but often emerges from a deep sense of responsibility for others. He felt proud not only for himself but for everyone who stood by him during the tense moments of confrontation. Looking around at the joyful faces, Hank understood that his saloon wasn't just a business. It was a sanctuary where people could come together, share their burdens, and find solace in each other's company. It had become a place where friendships blossomed amidst laughter, and support thrived despite difficulties. He knew that this unity had been forged through adversity and would continue to define their community. As he raised his glass in a toast to his patrons, Hank felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for each person who graced his saloon. They were family, bound not by blood but by shared experiences and mutual respect. With this newfound understanding, Hank resolved to protect that bond fiercely moving forward. The road ahead might hold more challenges, but now he knew they would face them together. As long as Hank's saloon stood tall, it would remain a safe haven for those seeking comfort and connection. A place where courage was found not just in grand gestures, but in every act of kindness shared among friends.